the 4th chapter of Romans. Regarding this justification by faith, what shall we say that Abraham, our forefather, discovered in this matter? For if indeed Abraham was justified by works, well, then he had something to brag about, though not before God. But what does Scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Now, when you and I work, our wage is not credited as a gift, but as an obligation. But the man who does not work, but who trusts in God, who justifies the wicked, his faith is credited as righteousness. David discovers the same thing when he speaks about the blessedness of the man to whom God credits righteousness apart from works. He writes, "Blessed are those whose sin is covered, whose transgression is forgiven. Blessed is the man whose sin the Lord will never count against him." Is this blessedness only for the circumcised, or also for the uncircumcised? Well, let's go back a little bit. We have been saying that Abraham's faith was credited as righteousness. Now, when was it credited? Was it before he was circumcised or after? Now, it was not after, but it was before. And Abraham received the sign of circumcision as a seal of the righteousness that he had before he was circumcised. And so he is the father of all who believe but have not been circumcised, in order that righteousness might be credited to them. He is also the father of the circumcised, who not only have been circumcised, but who also walk in the footsteps of faith our father Abraham had before he was circumcised. You see, it was not through the law that Abraham and his offspring received the promise that they would be heirs of the world, but through the righteousness that comes through faith. For if those who live by the law are heirs, then faith has no value, and the promise is worthless, because the law brings wrath. But where there is no law, there is no transgression. And so the promise comes through faith, in order that it might be by grace and be guaranteed to all of Abraham's offspring, not only those who are of the law, but also those who are of the faith of Abraham. He is the father of us all. As it is written, "I will make you the father of many nations." He is the father in the sight of God, in whom he believed, the God who gives life to the dead, and who calls things that are not as though they were. For against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and so became the father of many nations. As it is written, "So shall your offspring be." Without weakening his faith, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead, being about 100 years old, and Sarah's womb was dead also. And yet, he did not waver in unbelief regarding the promises of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, being fully persuaded that God had the power to do that which he had promised. And this is why it was credited to him as righteousness. In other words, credited to him as righteousness were written not only for Abraham, but also for us, to whom God will credit righteousness. To those of us who believe in the God who raised Jesus from the dead. He was handed over to death for our sin, and raised to life for our justification. The 4th chapter of Romans.